I come from a faith that says and teaches that saving one life is the same as saving the world. That when there are major problems, we have an obligation to address them even if we may not realize the solutions. It's what attracted me to work at a Jewish organization that is trying to promote global social justice. American Jewish World Service works in the broad area of sexual and reproductive rights. We see these populations, sexual minorities, young women, adolescent girls who don't get sufficient attention from many other programs and therefore become at greater risk of transmission of HIV, development of full-blown AIDS, loss of life, livelihood, capacity. I was in politics in New York City at the very, very beginning of the existence of the AIDS epidemic, and like many, many other people in New York, had friends who lost their lives. And there was a huge amount of public attention in the 80s in the States. And the good news is that that spotlight helped. But that's largely a United States and maybe a little bit larger developed world phenomenon. There's still people who don't know that worldwide this is a heterosexual problem that particularly affects women and girls. Around the world, women are much too often, both inside faith communities and inside national communities, perceived to be second-class citizens with fewer rights. They very often can tell you pretty dramatically that they don't have the power to negotiate sex and the use of protection. So if you have a virus that is spread by variety of personal behaviors, then as a faith-based leader, you need to be speaking out to people in your own faith to give them wise advice about how they prevent transmission. I was at a meeting at the Clinton White House at the end of 2000 with world leaders talking about next steps to combat the spread of HIV/AIDS, and a bishop from Africa said, "We now convene our pastors and tell them that they must tell their congregants to discuss sex at the breakfast table." Neither he nor his clergy ever talked about sex with their congregants, and now telling their congregants, you have to discuss this, you have to pass information on. One of the consequences of living in a so-called globalized world is that if we don't tackle health problems in the countries where they are severely decimating populations, it's all going to come back around to us. The maximum involvement of the US government, the maximum targeting of dollar resources to countries and to programs that have some demonstrated success in reaching more populations, in strengthening the roles of women and girls to combat the virus. The more of that can happen, the better. I would hope that both policymakers and regular Americans will understand that we're not talking about dependent populations all over the world just waiting for the United States or other outside powers or their own governments to step in. These are empowered people who are fighting very hard to protect the health and the welfare. And what policymakers need to see is how much can be done by the people on the ground if they have the information and the resources to do the work.